This is the 3ppodcast, Passion, Pain, and Progress. I am here with a special guest. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, kylexandr, Kyle for short, and a lot of people as of recently have known me as Organic Ironman.
Yes, sir. So just like a little backstory, man. I think we have some mutual friends, and but we met on Instagram. I've seen some of your stuff. You've seen some of my stuff, and man, I knew, I was like, man, this dude gets out and gets it done. So I reached out to you, and I was like, look, let's get a run together.
Yeah.
And we finally got together, got a good run in, and it's funny because we were talking about doing this podcast during the run.
During that run, yeah. Was that the half marathon we did together? Or was that before that?
I think that was before that.
Okay.
I think I don't know. I think we just did.
It was up there. It was
did.
like, was it that? I think that was the first time we actually ran together because you were saying, this is the first time I ever ran with somebody, and it's just a half marathon on a Sunday.
Okay, we did. It's funny because now that I'm not in marathon training, it's hard to believe that you was just like, at some point we were just putting up 13 miles at ease. Like, it was just like, oh, that's just what we do, like, on Sunday.
18, 20-mile weekends.
Yeah, it's so crazy because, and that was not even that long ago. So for it to like skip my mind, like, that's wow.
This is the winter too. We were bundled up, gloves, everything.
But I do love winter running, man.
Yeah.
That is
it's better than this heat. I'll tell you what. You get it in any time of the day. It's going to be the same kind of temperature. So now it's like either morning or nighttime.
Man, well, even yesterday, like, 'cause we got a workout with some of our teammates, and yesterday, it's funny because I think yesterday was the first time that I experienced brain fog in a normal workout.
Yeah.
Because
how hot it was.
It was so hot. Like, I was telling my wife, I was like, man, as soon as I got home, it was like my body was like, you've made it here. It's shutting down.
Right.
Like, I did just enough to get home, and then it was just like, it just shut down. So I'm starting to like, the last time I experienced brain fog was after the marathon.
Yeah.
Sure. But now, like, you're like, okay, it's so hot. Your body's like, all right, bro, it's time to relax.
Yeah, and it got just harder and harder throughout the day too.
Right. So man, let's get into it. So, and I'm pretty sure the listeners want to know your story, and we talked a lot over the last couple months or the year that I've known you.
I was gonna say, at least a year we've been getting to know each other through the DMs and then through workouts and stuff, you know.
So how did you get started in endurance sports?
Yeah, so do you ever see the movie like Limitless with Bradley Cooper? You know how he takes essentially Adderall is what he takes, and then he was in that fight scene, and he never took karate or anything like that, but he used to watch Bruce Lee movies as a kid, and then he incorporated those moves into that fight scene when he was on that drug. So I feel like there's a lot of ways to answer that question, but I think to the Limitless point was that there was a lot of things in my life that I surrounded myself around that just happened to be the three disciplines, right? So let's start with bike. One of my best friends, he was real big into BMX, and that was his thing. He would race BMX, and you'd go into his house, and you'd see BMX stuff kind of like all over the place. And so I feel like that kind of turned me on to biking and things like that with subconsciously without knowing, right?
Right.
And then running, I was working for this company, and my boy Steve, he was my partner, and this is why I was just starting to get back into like working out and things like that, and he was training for marathons and like half marathons, and we're working 8-hour days. I mean 8 to 6, and then if there's happy hours and stuff, 8 to 8, so like 12-hour days, And he would talk about. I'm like, what are you doing after work? He was like, yeah, I'm running 12 miles. I'm running 14. I'm like, what? I thought he was crazy, So I think those conversations kind of put it in my head a little bit too. And then swimming, it's just always been my biggest fear as a kid. I've always feared water. When there was pool parties and stuff like that, I didn't really care about the pool aspect. I cared more about the party. I wasn't getting in the water, And then obviously in the oceans, I'm still uncomfortable in the ocean. So those three things that were subconsciously put in my mind at an early on age, I think eventually led me to this path. And I think what really got me into it, it's oddly enough, Larry June, the rapper.
Oh.
So my boy, we worked at the same company me and Steve worked at, and just about 2018. Yeah, about 2018. Joe showed me that Healthy video. It was top song at the time, and the video was so funny. And he's just talking about riding bikes with chicks on trails. And I'm like, going to Whole Foods on a bike. I'm like, what is this? And it just stuck, and he would always just be posting on his Instagram, riding bikes in San Francisco,
right.
going to Whole Foods, getting some pre-cut fruit, going back to the crib, make a smoothie. I'm like, wow, this is dope. Yeah. So then, eventually, I ended up quitting that job. I just kind of had enough of it. It was me and the manager really didn't see eye to eye, and I didn't have another job lined up. I just quit because it was affecting my mental health so bad. It was just so toxic. I was like, I got to get out of here. Like, whatever I got to do. So I didn't have much money saved, maybe like a couple thousand. And then I actually took out that whole 401k from that company just so I could survive until I found my next move. And I think it was like about $6,000 I got after taxes or something like that. And I spent $1,000 of it on a new bike. I got a specialized rock hopper hardtail mountain bike. And man, I rode that thing for the first time, and I felt like a kid. Like, I was like, wow, like this free feeling I got from riding that bike was just like, wow, this is awesome. I felt like a kid and just loved it anytime I get to go out on my bike. So started with this new company and going to work. I was still, getting in the gym, but really bike was my favorite activity to do. So then started biking a lot, and then the pandemic happened. And prior to the pandemic, I was actually up at Lake Placid, and I was like walking around the town, and I saw this big plaque, and I'm like, what is this? And it was this Iron. It's a big Ironman town. Kenny does Placid, like that's their home race. So I was learning about it and learning how the town just kind of shuts down for this thing. So then I started looking into it. I'm like, oh, this is sweet. And then a lot of the podcast guys like Rich Roll and John Joseph, I was looking into there, and they're all ultra guys, and I'm just like, oh, whoa. So that was kind of like my intro to it. Is like, okay, I'm going to try this thing. So
I would have never guessed that was your intro into it because you go so hard. Like,
you would have thought like I was a swimmer or something.
Yeah, I really did.
No.
And it's crazy because having this conversation. That's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I think that a lot of people think that triathletes are those Olympic swimmers, and they just was like, all right, or they look at it like the big three.
Yeah.
Like these athletes, they come over to another sport because they can't compete in their sport, but they don't realize that a lot of people, there's normal everyday people who, like you said, like your friend was just going to work and was like, I'm running 14 miles tonight.
Seriously.
Or running 14 miles before they get to work. So I think it's enlightening for everyone to know that everybody's journey didn't start with competing at the highest level of sports.
Right, yeah.
Especially now, because that's a conversation that me and you always have. There's not a lot of representation for us in this sport,
right.
And I think because we're in it, it's so dope to see. But you're like, man, I wish a lot of people would get into endurance sports.
So at the end of the day, yes, the representation isn't always there, but I also think that this is a sport where that really doesn't matter just because of how open they are, right? So when you actually get to these villages, you've been around these people, these type of people, right? They don't give a fuck about religion, race. They don't care politics, like whatever. These people in this community, man, they just want what's best for them and what's best for the people around them. And you truly feel that. It's so genuine, and it's not fake or whatever. When I did my first race, and you could tell who's new and who's not. I didn't know how to set up a transition station, right? And these people, these old heads are just like, oh, you do this, you do that. They're just so welcoming. Right. So yeah, I wish there'd be more reputation, but I think now that the sport is getting bigger and bigger, just like that first black pro triathlete, the female, she's a beast. She's a beast. So we're getting there, and I think we're joining at a time where we're gonna make that stride. Exactly. And that's one of my biggest things that I wanted to. I told you all the time, it's like, man, it's so hard to put this content out and get on social media and share your story. But you said people need to hear this, like, that are like us, so they know, like, hey, you don't just have to play basketball. Hey, you don't just have to play football and things like. There's so many more other options out there. So we're joining at a time where I think once we see the sport in 5, 10, once we get to like Kenny and their ages, we're really going to see that. We're really going to see more people out there.
And we'll be ushering that generation and teaching them a lot of the things that you had, Coach Kenny or Sarge is teaching us about bikes and things like that. So I definitely agree with that. So one thing that goes along with this endurance sports is you learn quickly that whatever you put in your mouth will literally show up on your bike or your run or on your swim. So it's always been interesting to me to understand, when did you start that change into your vegan lifestyle from your regular diet, and how has it helped you in the endurance space?
Oh, okay. So 2016, 2019, I was working for this company for about 3 years, and I let everything go for me, right? I let my mental health go. I let my physical health go. I mean, I shot up my playing weight as senior year football. I think I played at like 265, and then 2016 was about 2 years after I played, and I shot up to about 330 during that 2016, 2019 period. All right, no, 2016 to about 2018, because then 2018, 2019, I took action, and then the weight started coming down. But man, it was a lot, man. So I knew my mental health was going. I knew my physical health was going. So I knew I had to do something. So my boy CTC's training, Sammy, he's been my OG. He was, I think he was 2 years removed from seeing him when I joined. But I'd follow all his stuff, and like I loved it. So I'd always like reach out to him and kind of stay close that way. But I reached out to him and I said, hey, I want to get some training in. I got to do something. I got to move. Like I'm big. I'm big as hell, man. So I reached out to him, started really working out. So I felt good. Obviously, I'm watching more what I'm eating when you go into that transition into just working out at the gym. But then my sister and her now husband, Jared, they watched What the Health one night in about 2017, 2018, early 2018, somewhere around there. And this guy, so my sister, when she introduced me to her husband, or her boyfriend at the time, he was making me ribs, making me steaks, like some of the best ribs and steaks I've ever had. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. That's an easy way to get to my heart at that time. So he's making me these ribs and these steaks, and then they go to watch What the Health, the documentary, and they're like, we're done. Like, they threw everything out in their house. Wow. They went grocery shopping the next day, and then kind of went cold turkey with it. So I was like, oh, this is definitely that's a conspiracy theorist at heart, right? So when I heard what she was saying, I was like, oh, this stuff kind of makes sense. So I just took the leap of faith one day and said, okay, I'm gonna watch it. And then I watched What the Health, and I was like, oh my God. It's a lot of people know me how I used to be, and then those same people, they had the same connotations of what a vegan is. I had the same, right? These hippie tree hugger dudes, don't shower, don't shave, like nothing. But when I actually learned more about the industry and how they're targeting people of color, or what this food that they programmed us to eat actually does to our bodies, I'm like, well, no wonder everyone's fucking sick and everyone's dying and everyone's losing loved ones and things like that. So I started, really diving into my research after I watched that, because I don't know what the hell to buy. I'm like, cook tofu? I've never cooked tofu, right? So I'm eating all this like Gardein frozen stuff at like Giant Eagle at the time. And right around the same time I took that switch, like I said, I was still working with Sammy. We were working up at Polish Hill, the community center up there with the pool. Yeah. And I met Frog. Wow. Like literally within that first month of making that transition, I meet Frog. And, I'm telling Sammy about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying this vegan stuff. And he's like, okay, cool. And I guess he had met Frog, like, just being at the gym, because that's where Frog used to lift at the time. And Sammy was like, yo, this dude's vegan. I looked at Frog. I said, what? This dude's vegan? I'm looking at Frog. This dude's, like, yoked on the squat bar. I'm like, what the fuck? This dude's vegan. So, you know, I'm chopping up with Frog in the gym. I'm like, dude, I just started this, and this is when he just started doing the pre-made meals. So like 2018. He was just launching that pre-made meals business, and he was like, "You like beans?" I was like, "No, I don't really fuck with beans." He was like, "Well, you better start." So you know, just how he was talking to me about the whole vegan stuff. And everything, and then obviously he was a resource to me, right? You know, I was buying his meals, I was eating them, and like once you actually start eating certain foods that bring you home to the foods you were accustomed to growing up, because it's really just flavor, right? Because with chicken and tofu, who's gonna eat just boiled chicken? Is anyone just gonna eat boiled chicken? No, you're gonna season that thing up. So same with tofu. So once I started, and obviously he has a similar taste palette than I have. So he's cooking this food, and I'm tasting. I'm like, yo, this is the same stuff, you know. So he was real big getting me into where I'm at now, and obviously still a resource for me, and I go support him whenever I can. But to go back to your question, that's kind of how I started the veganism, and then stuck with it, and found resources around me. And then as far as what it's been doing for triathlon, I mean, dude, you're training anywhere between 15 to 30 hours a week, depending on where you're at in your training schedule. So that's a lot of hours to train. You know, if an average person goes to the gym 5 times a week for an hour, that's only 5 hours.
Right.
That's not even touching what, you know, this endurance stuff is. And so the recovery is very important for me. I'm very big on recovery, and I found that this food that I'm eating helps increase that recovery, right? So if I know that I have, you know, a big weekend, Saturday and Sunday coming up, I'm fueling all week to make sure that I'm in the best possible, like, physical health to perform on those Saturdays and Sundays. So the recovery is really big. That's what really stuck with me. And then, you know, just who doesn't love a nice smoothie or something cold, fruity after 20-mile runs or 50-mile bike rides or something like that. So definitely helps with the recovery, which I find the biggest benefit to the diet and the sport.
Yeah. So now we get into life changes, because you know everything that you've said so far is just you know you're talking about starting from a point and then getting to where you are now. So in endurance sports, when you know, we always say all the time, our first run, and we'll reference back to our first run, because you'll understand, you know, that anybody who's in the endurance sports or just running, period, let's just say running, you know, or suffering, you understand, like, you'll go through something with somebody, you know, and I always look at it like this, like when I'm on a trail, when somebody waves to me, it's a respect thing, because you're out here doing it too. You know, we're out there actually putting ourselves, it's like voluntary pain.
Right.
So, our first run was like a therapy session.
It was, man.
In itself.
It was.
So, my next question is, how has your journey in endurance sports helped you become better in your personal life?
Man, I think this sport increases any bucket of life that you have, right? Just because, let's take work, for example, right? Everyone, there's a lot of stress around people. You know, people are working, there's stress around it. I find that when I do these hard, not just events, right? Like, the races are one thing, but that race, okay, let's 70.3. That's 70.3 miles. You are covering more than that in like a week, 2 week time frame, right? It's like the feeling that you get from finishing those races are big. But the actual grind to get you to these races, I think that fills all these other buckets of life. So again, so what I was saying with work, it's like if something hard comes up with work, it's not as hard as either my race or yesterday's workout where we did 50 miles on the bike, 5 miles on right off the bike to a run. Like, nothing at work is harder than that. Like, there's just nothing. So there's things like, you know, I'm not a father, but, you know, I watch how you handle your business, and, you know, think about it. That stuff that you probably look at fatherhood differently, because now that you're doing really hard stuff, the hard stuff that you found, you know, being a dad is probably nothing. It's so minuscule, right? It's actual stuff in this world. So that's the biggest thing that I found of this endurance stuff, is like, it helps me be a better everything, like better coworker, better friend. Like I'm more understanding, and all I want to do is like listen to what you got going on, and then I'll give my suggestions, right? The words that like, man, I beat up my body so much, but that hurt feels so good, right? And it's just like callousing, like the GOG and stuff. It's you really callous your mind. Think about it. How does a muscle grow? You beat the fuck out of that muscle day in, day out. But then you look at that muscle, you know, gradually a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, that thing's getting bigger, more defined because of how much work that you're putting on to that muscle, you know? So it's just all these buckets of life, man, just makes you, you know, better in everything.
It's interesting because, like you said, the fatherhood thing, and I always tell people all the time, my introduction to endurance sports was me going through a hard time in my life personally. And I remember getting on the treadmill. I still remember my first mile I ever ran. And I remember getting on the treadmill, and I remember thinking to myself, if my family needs me, in 10 minutes, can I run a 10-minute mile?
Right.
And I literally just, that whole time, I just kept thinking, and I remember thinking after I got done with that mile, I was just like, wow. Like, I don't feel as stressed as I did before. Yeah. And then it just kept going, and then now, you know, we're putting in crazy miles, and then you, but like you said, it's that perspective that you get, because you're like, there's nothing that I'm going to do today that was harder than what I did to myself this morning. Like, I got a whole day, I'm going to be with my wife, my kids, my, you know, everything, my, you know, all the bad news that might come my way, but I just ran so hard this morning that, like, you know, it's almost like you took your power back. You know, I'm going to take my power before the world tries to take it from me. I like that. You know, and that's, I think that's the perspective that most people don't understand about endurance sports, because when I talk to people and they're like, oh, you just ran? Who does that? Right, and you're like, but you don't understand, man. I struck first. Right. I struck first. Yeah. You know, life is going to come. It's going to happen. Life is going to hit you. But I chose to hit first.
Yep, I love that, man. I never thought of it like that, but it's true, right? It's, you know, everyone's like, why? It's, well, you know, especially, you know, we're both people that lost hella weight. We literally turned our life around. Yes. And, you know, a lot of people are always just like, why? It's like, well, what else? You know what? You want me to sit on a couch and eat Mickey D's and yes. Like, no one said nothing. No one asked me why then. You know, no one was asking me, oh, why? Well, why are you living like this? Why you go to work and then sit on your ass for 7 hours? Like, no one asked me why now, but now everyone wants to ask why. Like, why are you going and doing 60 miles on a Saturday? It's like, well, what else would you want me to do? You know?
You know, I had this same line of questioning to me, and I remember thinking to myself, it's like, you know, I got to a point where I was almost 300 pounds, and I'm 5'9", and you know, I was obese, morbidly obese.
That's a lot of weight for 5'9". Yeah.
And it's funny because I didn't get the questions about my health until I lost mad weight. Yep. And I was and I understand that people are concerned, but it's just like, it feels fake when you weren't concerned when you was passing me beers. Yeah. You weren't concerned when you know, when we were like, let's go get pizza.
We're just trying to motivate. Like, I just want, especially people that know me or in my circle, that I, you know, anyone I say happy birthday to, I fuck with you, right? Like, you know, I don't just say that. I just don't say that to just the average person on Instagram or Facebook, right? So if I'm reaching out to you and I'm trying to have conversation with you, I care about you. I want you to have the best possible life possible, and it's not that, you know, hey, I'm better than you, or that's not what that is. It's just like, yo, there's more in life than just going out on the weekends or essentially living for the weekends, you know, without going on the, you know, there's more to life than that, you know. Fuck it. All right, the weekend happened. What are you gonna do Monday? Oh, I gotta go to work and then I'll go home and chill. What are we doing? We're working. Like, it's just another day. You know, Mondays is nothing anymore. Mondays is just like, all right, I got a little lighter day, and then the week's gonna continue to build up.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. One of my questions that I want to ask you, because I'm very interested in how people keep going, especially when you achieve what you achieved. And I find it funny in like endurance sports. Like sometimes I gotta catch myself because I'll post a run and I'll have this inkling and be like, yeah, that was an easy 8.
Yeah.
And you're like, and you're back in your mind, you're like, that was not easy at all. Why are you lying?
Right.
And you know, and I feel like some of that is mirroring the pros sometimes.
Oh, for
and,
sure. Yeah.
Like somebody posts on Strava like, oh man, that was a quick 8
Yeah.
or a quick 7.
Easy,
piece.
literally easy run.
Right,
You know?
right.
Yeah.
And you know, being in a position where you are, you've done triathlons, you've done open waters, like
We were just talking about open water. Yeah.
right, like you've done open water swims, you have done, I've literally watched you do a triathlon, a month ago.
Yeah, about a month ago. Yeah.
And most people I see, like, people will sell their bikes on eBay or something like that.
One-time use.
Yeah, one-time use, right? And it's always funny to me because I'm like, someone like you who like, you're constantly trying to get better in this sport. What keeps you motivated? What keeps that edge on you? Because, you know, most people, like, it's really hard. Like, doing a full Ironman is hard.
Yeah.
Like, really hard. But doing a 70.3 is hard as well.
Yeah, it's definitely wild.
Most people's dreams are just to do a triathlon, not like do a full, just do a triathlon. So what keeps you motivated in this space and keeps you going?
I think just my motivation turned into discipline, right? Like, I was always motivated. Like, I had, you know, I lost my best friend in 2017, and that I've always kind of wore him on my shoulder. You know, he died before, you know, reaching 25, 26, and I kind of not so much carried legacy, but it was just more or less like, bro, I got you. Like, there was a lot of motivation I took in, right? Goggins, Rich Roll, John Joe, all these hardcore dudes, you know, that their motivation turned discipline to me, right? It's like, okay, because motivation only lasts so long. Like, when let's say you're doing a 13-mile run, or 10, make it easy. 10-mile run. Right? It was funny. My boy Carlo, he actually just hit me on my Instagram because I was down on myself a little bit. I was like, yeah, I was supposed to do 5 miles, but I ended up doing 5K. And he's like, only 5K. You know what I mean? Like, people do 5K races. So, okay, so you got 10 miles. If you are at miles 7 to 8, motivation isn't going to get you to the last 2 to 3 miles, right? That's going to be discipline and like grit. Motivation is, okay, I know I'm going on a run today. It may be cold. I got my socks. I got my gloves. I got my hat. That's motivation, I feel, right? Discipline is actually going and get it done to 100%. So getting the full 10 miles done. Even if you got to walk it, like, you're still doing the 10. You're still doing the 10. So I just feel like everything that's motivated me, that I've taken in, and still take in, right? But that motivation now has turned truly into discipline now that it's been close to 2 years of me, like, on this type of journey. And you're right. A lot of people will do. I didn't even know that there was levels under 73. I thought 73 was just this is how so raw I was and new into this game. So when I did the 73 in Boulder, a lot of people were like, "Oh, is this your first 73?" I was like, "It's my first try ever." Like, what? You didn't do an Olympic or sprint? I was like, "What are those?" I still didn't know. After I did 73, I still didn't know what Olympic and sprint distances were. So I just jumped right in, man. And, you know, I feel like when you do those races, John Joseph said, he was like, you either get the bug or one and done, or you got the bug and you want to keep doing it. And, you know, that feeling that I got, you know, the couple runs I had prior to me flying to Boulder last year, I started crying on those runs. There was like 4 or 5 runs that I just started crying because I envisioned finishing that race. And it's like, I think I was so emotional because I knew personally how much work that put in, right? I don't post I try to, but it's a lot of, we say all that. It's a lot of work, man. Like, just putting out content of especially these workouts. It's like, what, am I going to hold my phone while I'm running 12 miles? Like, no one wants to see that hurt, you know? I wish I had like Nick Bear. I had like a camera guy at all times. Like, maybe I'd put out more content. But at the end of the day, man, when I was just so emotional those last few runs before Boulder, and Obviously, once I crossed that line, I was very emotional too. I sat on the fence and just cried for like 3 or 5 minutes because that feeling of accomplishment, because, you know, it wasn't always like this, man. A lot of people think that, you know, even though I showed like a happy, you know, I was fat guys, we had to be funny. We had no choice, right? When you're fat, you got to be funny, or you're just like an introvert where you're in the house type of thing, which that was really me, who I wanted to be. It was just like, be introverted, stay in the house, keep getting fat, but like, you got to compensate for being fat for something else. So I was always funny. Deep down, I was hurting, man. Like I was very depressed. You know, like I said, my best friend died. My mom was about to move back to the Philippines. My sister and her boyfriend were looking to leave Pittsburgh. So I really didn't have any. You know, I don't have a big family in Pittsburgh. I'm a military kid, so we kind of just landed here with no family. And then when I moved to Pittsburgh as a kid, I just realized how family-oriented Pittsburgh is. Like everyone's got their Meemaws and Paps like right next to each other. I never had that. So when they all started to leave, I was just like, I felt lonely. And obviously when you feel that loneliness on top of depression that you're already feeling, like it's a scary state, man. So I was really dealing with like the mental battles for quite some time. And 2017 was like a little scary year for me, you know, a little bit after Matt died and all that stuff started happening. You know, I almost lost that battle with mental health. So I think going through that experience, knowing I've been to the lowest of lows, knowing that what I could have done as far as hurting myself is nowhere near the hurt that you feel when you do this endurance stuff, right? Like that hurt that I would have done to myself, you know, there's no hurt like that, right? It's one and done type of deal, right? Where here it's like I get to actually battle those demons in a much more healthier way. Like, you know, when I first started running, I was like, wow, because, you know, even though you might be listening to music sometimes on a run, your mind's going. Like you're like I like visualize my day, I visualize the day before, maybe what I could have done better and things like that. And so knowing that feeling in the back of my head that what I could have done to myself, it makes the endurance stuff not as hard. Yeah, it still hurts and everything like that, but I'd much rather hurt myself in that way than that, because then, you know, obviously my family respects that a lot more than what could have happened. Then they're like lonely, crying, you know, they're all fucked up over it, right? So doing this hurt is a much more healthy way. And you know, obviously I played football, right? And I know the struggles that happen post college, or, you know, if you don't go to NFL, you know, that's a scary route. You don't just go to the park and be like, hey, let's go put helmets and pads on and go play football. Football's not that sport where you can just keep playing recreationally like most other sports. So there's a bad mental health issue within just football players, right? Especially when they're done. They don't know, even if you played in the league and got millions of dollars, like there's still mental health issues going on with football players. And that's one of the things is I kind of want to show people, like old teammates and stuff. It doesn't have to be trials. So, like, go out and run. Like my boy Christian, he it's funny, he was 2 or 3 grades above me. I like looked up to him. He was like Filipino from Cali. I was like, you know, I came from a kind of essentially an all-white Catholic school. There's a little sprinkle of people of color in there, but, you know, definitely no Filipinos. So when I joined the football team at Seton Hill and I saw Christian, I was like, oh, this dude's Filipino safety. I was like, where they don't got them out in Pittsburgh. So I always look up to him, and in college, and then now he's seeing what I'm doing, and now he's starting to run. And he's a truck driver. And if you know anything about truck drivers, they kind of just truck go, sleep, eat, and then that's it. But following him is so cool because he does these routes from like San Diego, Arizona, like he's all over the West Coast. But like while he's at these truck stops, he's like hitting jump ropes, or he'll go on like a quick 2-mile run, and he's seeing a lot of like the Ben Johnson guy. I showed him his page, and he's seeing like all these cool running stuff coming on his feed, and now he's buying Vapor Flies and he wants Alpha Flies. So I just want to show people that, especially football players, because that's where my passion is, but just in general as well, is that there's healthier options when dealing with mental health. Obviously, I think therapy is very, very beneficial. I think especially people like us, right? We have a weird a weird thought of what therapy is supposed to be. Like, oh, you know, man up, bro. You know, like that's what we were raised on. And I think it's very important that, you know, especially men go and seek help when they're feeling like that, because most men, like, just like me, no one would have known I was in that deep state just based on how I carried myself, I tried my best not to like leak it into my circle, right? So there's a lot of people out here that are hurting, that just are suppressing it, right? And when you suppress that, it just builds up. So it's just a callus, right? So I just want to show people that there's more options out there than just therapy. I think there's other therapeutic options, like, you know, the running, man, like that is therapeutic, man. Like you really get to pick through your thoughts on those runs and stuff, you know?
Man, you said so much, and it spoke a lot to me because I experienced that dark place before, and I tell you all the time, like when I run, like and it was something that I heard David Goggins do. Like he runs without headphones.
Yeah.
And
I thought you were nuts when you first started doing it. I was like, I don't know how you do it.
But it's crazy because I think that's people don't really so when we talk about being motivated, and like you said, there's a lot of external things that keep you motivated.
Yeah.
But like that self motivation comes from those places, and I think that sometimes when you're running, that music, it keeps your brain occupied, but it doesn't allow you to go deep.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can get where you're coming from, because when you're at that place, when you said you was at that place where you almost felt like you lost that battle with mental health, that's the lowest you can go. But also it's the most rawest you can be with yourself, because you're actually having that real conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And even if it's you telling yourself, like, all of these things that's happening in my life, and my family is moving, and you know, my mom's ready to go back to the Philippines, but it's forcing you to really come to that grips that being like, damn, I'm lonely. And that might not mean a lot to other people, because like you said, a lot of people got families and, you know, X, Y, Z, and your idea of lonely versus what their idea of lonely means two different things. Yeah. So for someone to really understand that, they would have to be walking in your shoes. And it's hard to do that, because when I'm in that lowest place, I don't even want to express it to anybody, because I don't want to be a burden on you. I don't want to put that on you, because the truth is, I don't know if I'm gonna be all right, and I don't want you to tell me I'm gonna be all right, because you have no clue what I'm going through.
That's the worst, man. Everything's gonna be all right.
Yeah,
that's like the worst thing you could tell a depressed person.
Clue. Yeah, you have no clue. So, but getting back to the endurance side of it, you can have those real conversations, but it's hard to have those real conversations when you're sitting still, right? Because you're not doing anything. You're just dealing with that pain mentally. But every when you're having those conversations when you're running, every foot strike is pain. Yeah. Every time when your body is like, you can feel your guts being like, hey, I'm going to another storage. Yeah. You know, I need something. I need some nutrition. So I'm moving to another storage. Like, I'm getting it from here. Yeah. And you can actually feel your body moving and working in different ways and catching cramps and stuff. So it's like when you're having those conversations while you're going through pain, it's a lot different, because you know that pain ends at some point.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and it's the same mentally.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I always say it all the time. I've never been in a hard situation that when I came out of it, I wasn't like, man, I didn't grow from that. I always have grown from everything that I've been into, anything that I've been into. And I'm like, man, I can't see myself out of that. But when I broke through to the other side, I'm like, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be who I am.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You know, so I think it's funny, because this conversation broke two of the questions that I was going to have, because I was going to ask you, what was the hardest thing that you've been through that you made it to the other side?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you
answered
that.
Yeah.
You know, you answered that for sure. So, what advice would you give to a upcoming someone who wants to get into triathlons or endurance sports? Yeah, so
at the last victory camp, there was actually just this random, now I know he's a kid, but this kid Evan, he was just up there swimming when we were doing our camp, and he was asking us, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" I was like, "Oh, this is our team camp. We're just doing open water swimming." He's like, "Team camp?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm just getting in this tri world," and So he reached out to me and he was asking me about kind of the diet thing, and he wanted to kind of learn more about it, why I do it, recovery, and all those aspects as well, right? And he called me on the phone, and I was talking to him, and he was like, what, same question, what would you give, advice of, someone like me who's just getting into this, all my friends are, trying to go out drinking all the time, and they just don't understand, and I was telling him, man, I was like, hey, you gotta have those realistic expectations with not only yourself, but with your friends too, is like, hey, I may not go out every Friday night now, because I have to prepare for my long workouts on Saturday. And so I was like, hey man, you really have to, like, if you want this, there are some sacrifices, right? So in the beginning, there was a lot of sacrifices. I wasn't going out, as much, and then I got Whoop, and then I actually stopped drinking a lot just because I saw what it was doing to my body. Right. So it was like, I'm already socially, like, it's already hard to, like, be socially with me on paper, right? Like, oh, he's vegan, barely drinks, and then you see endurance stuff. So, like, on paper, it's like, how would I, have an interaction with Kyle? Right. But I'm still me, right? Like, I just choose to go about my business a different way, and that's kind of what I was telling him, is like, hey, if your girlfriend sees this as a problem, it's like, hey, you're not going out every weekend because you want to get into this endurance sports. You have to let her know, like, hey, I'm still a person too. Like, yes, this relationship means something to me, but that doesn't also mean that I have to forget who I am. Because I was telling him, I lost who I was for a long time. I was trying to make other people happy, and it led to a very down spiral. Yeah. And then once I actually put me first and put my goals that I, put down in my head, wrote down, and executed on, that's when you actually find your self-worth, man. Like, when whether it's endurance sports, business, like your business stuff, right? You wanted to sell your business. So when you did that accomplishment that you're feeling, that's not an endurance sport, right? Yeah, it's a long process, but you also weren't running, 20 some miles to get to that point, right? So just when you do things that you set your mind to, you really unlock all these different things of who you are. That's what I was telling him, is like, hey man, if you really want to get into this, it's tough. I like 15 to 30 hours a week, and then you go to a full one, it is like 40, 60 hours a week you're training for 140.6. And so I was like, hey, if you really want to get into this, you got to have those realistic expectations with these people and say, hey, these are my goals. This is what I have to do to get to my goals. And if that means sacrificing a few nights out of the month of going out, that's what I'm going to have to do, and you're going to have to understand that. Love me or hate me type of deal, right? So I think it's just like, if you really want to get into this, you have to realize the realistic expectations of what this life entails. Is like, you don't see Sam Long and Lionel going out on their YouTube videos, right? They are literally every week working. Like, right. This is work. Obviously, they're doing it and make a lot of money off doing it, but still, you watch these videos and you see just how that discipline works in real life, and it's like, hey, what do I really want? Do I want to go out for these 3-4 hours for these short-term pleasures? Because is that going to lead to, my actual end goal? So it's just really just having those real expectations of what everything would entail to get to your goals, and just sticking to that, sticking to your true self, and sticking to the actual plan that you've created.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I also think that people, you're like, I look at it like, one thing I love about business is that it walks hand in hand with life. Mm-hmm. And in business you find patterns, and through me being a businessman, I found the patterns in everything, and I think everything just kind of goes along with each other. So what I look at endurance sports is the same way a lot of people look at real estate, right? Mm-hmm. No matter if you own real estate or if you rent, you're in a real estate business. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is. You're just renting from somebody, or you're renting out the unit. You're part of the
process. Yeah.
But I also feel that way about endurance sports and marathoning, because you're already in it.
Yeah, right.
We're already in it. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's funny because to call back on a conversation that we were having earlier about marathons, people were like, man, you do a marathon, and it's funny because I always write it off like, yeah, it's a marathon. But the reason why I write it off, or the reason why I don't feel any like type of pride with just doing a marathon, is I feel like my whole life has been a marathon.
Facts.
I feel like the way I felt on mile 16, I felt that way before.
Yeah, right.
It just was in a different endeavor in my life.
Right.
But it was mentally, because yeah, your body is taking you to that point, but you're using your body to reach those limits of stress mentally.
Right.
And at mile 16, I didn't stop and say, okay, I'm the most stressed I've ever been. I quit. No, you push through. You fight through those cramps. You fight through the rain. You fight through all of the things to get to where you are. So I think that advice is so spot on, because not only do you have to be realistic with triathlon or endurance sports, but it forces you to be realistic with your life.
Right.
Because you can't go out and drink. You can't do this. But also, how much are you leaving on the table by just going out and drinking, even without doing endurance sports?
Right.
Like, there's nothing wrong with having a drink and whatever.
Right.
I
have an off season.
Right,
don't get twisted.
Right.
I have an off season.
But I always look at it like this. We always talk like celebrate. We're like, oh man, it's time to go celebrate. We had a good time. But it's like, there's a lot of people celebrating and they ain't done shit.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Most of the people at the Southside clubs, come on, man. You're buying that on credit, bro.
Right. So you haven't even done anything to celebrate.
Right.
So my thing is just like, you have to be realistic, not only with triathlon, but with life. What are you doing to achieve these goals and actually being able to celebrate? So when it comes to a lot of the kids that's coming into the sport, or a lot of just even like there's older people that's coming into the sport, like you said, realistically, is your wife okay with you putting in these long hours? Is your kids okay with you putting these long hours? Or is are you okay? Because it hurts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, after the marathon, I'm pretty sure I think I broke my foot.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Like, I'm pretty sure I think I broke my foot. Like, and I only say I think because I didn't get 100% confirmation.
Yeah.
And that happened at mile 12. You know what I mean?
That's
like
a long 14.
Yeah, like it wasn't even like we was at the end. Like I was hobbling, but there was no excuse. Yeah. Because I had a goal to reach.
Definitely different for a 23-year-old to say, hey, I'm actually going to stop going out and start doing this, because I know at 23 I wasn't doing but I think that also too that helps me skip a lot of these going out just on random occasions, just because I've done all of that you could do. I've done it to the highest ability you can. I mean, I've experienced it, so I'm cool off of that. And now my goals just switched. I think that just comes with growing up, right? I think whether you're endurance sports or whatever, I just think there needs to be a shift in your priorities. Right. Like, what's the point if you're married with a child and you're still going out on Friday, Saturday nights? Like, what is the point? I mean, unless you have an A1 babysitter and you could just do that. But I don't know, when it becomes it's time to be a father, for me, it's like, yo, that's I'm locked in on that. Just like this tri stuff, I'm locked in on this, and anything else is just minuscule. It's like, yeah, I may not go out every weekend, but when it's off season, I'm gonna do me. Like, I was just in Mexico, I still enjoyed myself. There's a definitely balance that could be had. Like, a lot of these athletes, even on the pro level, they still drink beer and things like that, like a couple nights a week. It's just me, since I'm not a gifted athlete like that, especially in endurance sport. I can't do that. I can't. There's no alcohol balance for me. I need my water. I need my Newton tablets. Like, I need these things to get me right, because I'm just not gifted like that. So I do have to work a little bit harder to get to the results that I want. But I'm okay with that, because like I said, I've experienced that stuff, and I have these certain goals that I know what it takes to get there, and I'm not gonna let just saying no to someone on going out stop me. I'm like, hey, listen, I got stuff to do Saturday. I can't, catch me during the off season. I'll be out, but for right now I got Boulder and Florida coming up. I'm locked in. I want to get my goals in.